Welcome to Beyond the Build, the official podcast of Associated Builders and Contractors, North Florida. I'm your host, Kelvin Enfinger, and today we are joined by two industry leaders who help guide ABC's advocacy every day. We have Kristen Swearingen, Vice President of Government Affairs, and Melanie Pfeiffenberger, Senior Director of Political Affairs. Ladies, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
I appreciate you taking the time. You two are a couple of rock stars up in D.C. and what you do for ABC, and we really appreciate you guys. And so before we dive into any policy and politics, I want to start with some quick background on yourselves. Kristen, if you want to tell us just a little bit about yourself and what got you into lobbying and how you got into this role with ABC.
Sure. So I grew up in D.C. I was surrounded by lobbyists in my family. Never thought I'd want to do it, but went to work on Capitol Hill because it seemed like the natural thing to do if you lived here after college. So I did. I went to work for Senator Jim Bunning from Kentucky. He has since passed. He was a baseball Hall of Famer, but I realized I didn't like it on the Hill very much. So I ended up coming to work for Associated Builders and Contractors as a legislative assistant in 2007, and I am still here. Was promoted a couple times, and I've been in this role for 7 years.
Very interesting. Well, I mean, everybody gets along on the Hill. I mean, it just seems like a great place to be hanging out. So can't believe you didn't enjoy it. All right. Melanie, how about you?
Yeah, hello. Thanks so much for having us. Thrilled to be here. As you mentioned, I'm the Senior Director of Political Affairs. I've been on board at ABC for almost 8 years now. Been in the political fundraising advocacy world for my entire career. So grew up in Pennsylvania after that, worked in local politics at a mayor's office, then eventually moved to DC to do some grassroots work, some grassroots campaigns, issue advocacy, digital work, fundraising, worked at campaign committees, and so on and so forth. And knew about ABC, about our members, what ABC stood for several years actually before joining the team, and just thrilled to be a part of such a great organization representing such incredible, compassionate, wonderful members across the country.
Well said. I mean, it's a great group of people, contractors in general across the country, if you get to know them and just look at how they give back to their community and what they do day in and day out to be able to provide just better facilities and services in their community, but just, how they get entrenched in the fabric of their community from just contributing in meaningful ways through different charitable organizations and just helping people. It's just really a great group of people. Let's go right into what we have at our disposal at ABC when it comes to our advocacy toolbox. And so for the members that really may not see all the moving parts, walk us through kind of what tools ABC uses to influence policy. And let's just start out with the PAC and talk about that for a few minutes.
Yeah, that sounds great. So I often say that when we look at ABC and all of the tools we have in our advocacy and our political toolbox, right? We have a number of different things. One, we obviously have ABC National, our national organization. From that, we have 67 chapters across the country, North Florida being one of them. And each one of those chapters have their own things, right? State PACs, local things. Then we have the Free Enterprise Alliance, and we also have our ABC Political Action Committee, our ABC PAC, which you mentioned. And our ABC PAC, right, the purpose of it is to work within the federal election process to really further the goals of the association, to further the goals of the merit shop industry through direct involvement in supporting and opposing candidates at the federal level. What that all means is that through ABC PAC, we raise money directly from our members, and we're able to give that money, all personal money. We're able to then direct that money to support individuals for the office of the president, U.S. Senate, and the U.S. House of Representatives. And so there's a really powerful punch there, right? In the 2023-2024 election cycle, we actually spent $2.5 million through our ABC PAC supporting merit shop-friendly candidates, supporting really important folks who understand our industry, understand exactly what you were talking about, right? That burdensome regulations really do harm communities. And so it's a really, really impactful tool that we have at our disposal.
I will say, to add to that, we have one of the largest PACs in the business community here in DC. And as Mel said, it helps us elect merit shop friendly candidates. And those candidates know how big our PAC is, like they come to us for the money, right? And so it's very well known, and it's probably, I would say, perhaps the biggest tool that we have in our shed. It makes a big difference.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, between the PAC and the FEA, certainly has made its mark on the Hill, the association in general. You guys' influence, the policy that we would advocate for. So to see those elected officials coming to you all because they want to be a part of it.
Begging is not a term I mean, it's true. The emails we get all day, I'm like, please stop begging us for money. It's very unattractive.
Well, it is a power of influence, but it's certainly it's good influence in the sense that I can't think of one thing that we've advocated for that I would say isn't a common sense approach to policy that should be easy for anybody to get behind. Right.
Listen, we agree. We think we welcome everybody to come over to, right, the merit shop philosophy ways. And I think on top of what Kristen was saying and how we really do have a lot of interest in folks wanting to gain support from our ABC PAC, I think what really differentiates our PAC too is that we're a principled organization and a principled PAC. And what I mean by that is if somebody asks us for money, we don't just say, oh, absolutely, here's your PAC check, right? We actually look at what is their, if they're an incumbent, if they're already in office, what is their past voting record? Where do they stand on our issues? Do they understand our issues? We look to see, can we educate them on our issues? Can we explain that, the merit job construction industry is 90% of the construction industry is open shop in this country. Do they understand that? Do they see what we're advocating for? And so we really do. We take a lot of pride in that and that we are a principled PAC. And so for 2024, the election cycle, like I mentioned, we actually supported 210 individual races where the candidate we supported came out victorious. We have an 85% win rate from 2024, meaning of all the candidates that we supported in 2024, 85% of them saw, took home the W. We're the victor in their race, right? But we're very proud of that number and those contributions in 2024 and anything in the past and anything in the future really comes back to, it is ABC's voice in elective politics. And it clearly does have a difference strictly just look at what the stats say, right? 85% is a big one.
Oh, and Mel mentioned the fact that if you're an incumbent, you have to have a voting record. You have to be a merit shop champion in order to get funds from our PAC. But if you are a candidate who hasn't been here before, we make you fill out a questionnaire to make sure that you're aligned with merit shop issues. So, and then we have a group of trustees that vote to see if those folks can even get the money. So it's not just staff willy-nilly handing out, thousands of dollars at a time. There's a system that's been in place for a long time and it works, and we help candidates win.
We brought the questionnaires all the way down to the local level for our county commission, city council, races in our local areas in our chapter. And, the questionnaire is a great way to find out where someone stands on policy that affects our industry right off the bat. So you don't have to question it. You don't have to go to a forum, send it to them. And if they don't answer that probably answers your question. If they do answer, then sometimes their answers can be very telling as to where they stand for our industry.
As we found out the hard way.
But. Yes, we've seen that on all fronts, right? It's a good segue into, what we're talking about here. So we've talked about what the PAC exists for, what FEA exists for, and how that influenced the 2024 election. I'd like for you to, either one of you, just to touch on real quick those swing states where we wholeheartedly believe that we moved the needle and what those outcomes were.
Yeah, well, I would say this, like I said, when it comes to the PAC with those 210 wins, a good example is 10 of those wins from the 210 were Senate flips or House flips. And so last year we saw, individuals who we call the merit shop candidates, right, in states where there wasn't an individual before, and now there is. And I think that's really incredible. Now, obviously, today, the U.S. House of Representatives has a very, very slim margin, right? There's 218 Republicans, 214 Democrats, 3 vacancies, I believe. I don't know. Seems to change, every other day. So we'll have to double check that if you're listening to this at a later date. But we always say, right, all of the work, all of the funds that ABC PAC gives directly is incredible. Completely separate from ABC PAC, we have our Free Enterprise Alliance. And our Free Enterprise Alliance is our issue advocacy and education bucket, completely separate from PAC, right? But one of the big things that we do with FEA, especially in election years, is we do a lot of get out the vote work just to remind folks of, hey, free enterprise is really important. Fair and open competition helps raise everybody in a community. It helps raise every individual, every household. And in 2024, when we talk about, those swing states, right? It's not just about swing states. It's really about folks who maybe don't vote a lot, or who have never voted before and really need to get out and vote. We targeted 2.8 million voters through our Get Out the Vote campaigns from FEA, right? They had a 75.9% turnout. Let me say that again. 2.8 million voters contacted. 75.9% of those folks came out and vote. Of those people,
It's incredible.
344,104 voters either sat out in the 2020 election or they had never voted before. So when we talk about the power of ABC and the power of what we do, we're educating folks on the important issues of ABC, and then we're saying, hey, go take action, right? These things are important, now go take action. Prime example is 344,104 voters in 2024. Had some of them never been to the polls before, voting on knowing the importance of our issues.
Incredible. It shows the power of messaging, right? And just what it takes to sometimes get people motivated. But I think in our day-to-day lives, we all get busy, right? We get busy in our businesses and we get caught up in what's going on. And sometimes we forget that the most important things that are happening for our businesses sometimes are happening behind the scenes. And that's what you guys are doing. And I think even for us that are, somewhat engaged in politics, often need to be reminded of the issues at hand and what's affecting our industry and what you guys are doing to advocate for better policy. And let's take that into the next topic, because Kristen said something earlier where sometimes, we put questionnaires out, we have conversations, and we have beliefs that something will happen after an election. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily always happen that way. And so I know we had some high hopes that we would see project labor agreements from the Biden administration rescinded. However, we're well into Trump's presidency, and we have not seen PLAs rescinded. And I know it's a constant conversation, and there's a lot to this. So like for you guys, just to give us a quick update on, how we arrived where we are with PLAs, why we're still kind of stuck with it, and what ABC's doing to try to get some reform or just repeal to PLA.
Sure. As far as the administration and where we thought they would be on project labor agreements and where we are today, I will say that we were hopeful, and we had been advocating during, the entire election period for the rescinding of the Biden executive order mandating project labor agreements on federal construction over 35 million or more. We were hopeful that and the reason we were hopeful that it would be rescinded is because in President Trump's first term, it became very apparent that he wanted a second term, right? And so he and his administration believe, and they have said this publicly everywhere, that the rank and file union vote got them elected, right? And they need to keep those folks in their camp. And so his first term, it became clear to us that we weren't going to get executive order. At that point, it was the Obama executive order rescinded because he didn't want to piss off the unions, right? So second term, let's go. This is our shot. This is our chance. We're hoping and praying and all the things and lobbying that we will see our executive order overturned and an executive order put in place for fair and open competition in the first 100 days. We didn't see it. We had numerous meetings with the White House, with the Department of Labor, with OMB, and they were listening to us. They had an open door policy, still do, I would say. But what we got instead was a memo, sort of adding a few exemptions to the Biden executive order. Instead of rescinding the executive order. The White House believes, I think, that this was helpful to our industry. We would say otherwise and have done so to their faces numerous times. That's no secret. And at this point, we are hopeful and have put all our eggs in the basket of hoping that the 11th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals, where we have a larger challenge to the entire PLA executive order, will have a ruling any day and rule in our favor that project labor agreements are unconstitutional. And if that were to happen, that would be far better than an executive order from President Trump. Because when a president, obviously, as we've seen in the past, let's say President Trump rescinds the Biden executive order tomorrow, and we have a President Gavin Newsom come in 2028, he could just put the executive order right back in place. A court decision ruling in our favor would be much, much better and permanent. That's not to say that if we don't get that we still won't push hard for an executive order out of the White House. Just we're hoping that that the court rules in our favor and we don't even have to deal with an executive order at this point. That would be the better outcome. That's not to say that we're just sitting on our hands and watching everything happen and hoping for the best. We still have a Fair and Open Competition Act introduced in Congress. We have a record 104 sponsors in the House and 27 in the Senate. Many of those folks have signed on to a letter addressed to the president asking him to rescind the executive order. But again, it's sort of Groundhog Day. I think that now per usual, we're back in an election cycle where in 2028, I think J.D. Vance wants to be president. And he is, if you've read his book, you will know that he is from the Rust Belt and also very union friendly. And so there's a lot of politics at play. To your point you made earlier, Kelvin, our issues are pretty black and white, and it's easy to be on our side. And it's sometimes very interesting that people who you think would agree with us, and perhaps those that are contractors or developers in their past life and who have chosen not to use PLAs, would sign anything other than an executive order for fair and open competition. So, at the end of the day, everything is political, sadly. And what we're telling people now, our members now, is to continue filing bid protests if there is a PLA on a job that you've been awarded, and we are winning bid protests. So yes, it costs money, but another tool ABC has to offer is the CLRF, the Legal Rights Foundation, and we are funding those bid protests for those folks that can't afford to do them themselves. We've won all of them, actually. So that's where we're winning right now, and hopeful that any day we'll get a decision out of the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. That was
certainly
a lot of information.
Tough subject for our federal contractors that are members and federal contractors that I know, especially in the South. And when you look at Florida, the thought of trying to provide union labor for a project over $35 million in Florida is absolutely insane. It just doesn't exist, right?
Right.
And so, what you're seeing is projects get canceled, projects are going to the wayside, and it's beginning to affect contractors, merit-based contractors that have great employees that are part of our communities.
Well, the irony of it all is that jobs such as border walls have been canceled because of project labor agreements, right? Isn't that the administration's number one priority, to secure the borders?
I agree wholeheartedly with you.
I know.
Well, the work y'all are doing on it's incredible. To stay with it and keep pushing it. And, there's a lot of due process, obviously, that's happening that just it takes time. And I know sometimes as contractors, we might get a little impatient, right?
Well, I keep asking, when will the court decision come down? When will it come down? And the answer is it could come down while we're on this podcast. We don't know what's taking so long, right? And hopefully it's taking a long time because they want to make the right decision.
And I think to your point, Calvin, and to Kristen's point, our merit shop construction industry, the members of ABC, one, we don't shy away from a fight. And two, I think that the construction industry over the course of the years has had to be flexible and nimble and okay, what do we need to do next to get the work done? And I think what's really interesting is we continue to do that. And whether that is things of, hey, listen, unfortunately, it looks like a project will be canceled, right? Our members will say, okay, let's look at what's next, what's on the horizon next, because we really just want to deliver work safely and ethically and for the betterment of our communities, right? So to Kristen's point, we joke it is a lot of politics, for better or for worse, but ABC has been around for, right, it's our 76th year. We weren't around, we haven't been around for 76 years by just sitting on our hands. So we're not doing that now, and we won't ever, really.
Very well said. And I think that's why if you gauge the 20+ thousand members across the country, they know that ABC is willing to fight. And that's why they want to be a part of this, because you all believe in the mission
we're not going to compromise on project labor agreements. They're not constitutional. So, to your point, we stick up for what we believe in.
And that's what we love. It goes back to what we were talking about with candidate questionnaires and making the decision of who you're going to support. They're coming to us for support. And sometimes those decisions can be tough, right? Because sometimes those decisions are not an incumbent. Maybe it's somebody that, led us to believe that they were friendly to our industry and our way of doing business in the past. But sometimes those tough decisions have to be made to go in a complete opposite direction. We see it nationally. We see it in the state. We see it locally. I mean, sometimes we have to make those tough decisions and hope that there's no ramifications in the long run for it.
Right. Or one of the few, maybe only association that gets trade association that gets involved in primaries, and to your point, doesn't always support the incumbent if they're the bad guy, and we get in trouble for it with the powers that be on the Hill. I can't tell you the number of times I've been pulled aside and yelled at for doing those things. It's very unpleasant. Fool us once, shame on you. Fool us twice, shame on us.
Yeah,
That's right. I think that's how it goes.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Well, I think too, it's to Kristen's point, right? And to your point, we're such a principled organization, and we're able to stand by those principles because of the strong members that we have across the country, and not just members like yourself, right? We have companies who are fully employee owned, right? ESOPs across this country where they are like, hey, no, we want you, stand firm in the beliefs of fair and open competition, that project labor agreements are unconstitutional, from the state all the way down to the local level, all the way up to the federal level, right? And so I think that's one of the reasons too why myself and Kristen are so passionate about what we do, because we do believe we are standing on the right side of these issues. There shouldn't be a thumb on a scale for certain folks, right? The lower, most responsible bidder should be the one that, is considered. And there shouldn't be, if you don't like those folks, you shouldn't put a thumb on the scale just because you don't like them for whatever reason, right? And so for us, it's really a privilege to be able to advocate for our members. And that advocacy doesn't just happen, in an election year. We actually are running education campaigns all year round, from the federal down to the state and local levels, because even to your point, Kelvin, right? Sometimes we see folks who maybe they're in office, it's their first year, maybe they're in the office, and after 12 years of understanding and supporting us, they've decided to go the other way for whatever reason, right? It's our job to continue to educate them and their constituents about the fact that 90% of the construction industry is open shop, and this is what that means.
Well, you've used the word principles a couple times, and I think that is a great word when you look at merit-based contractors. And one of the arguments I know that comes from the union that's part of this PLA agreement, that somehow unions provide better services, better benefits, or a safer working environment to their employees, which simply isn't true. And we have collected the data, and we have those stats to provide that merit-based contractors across the U.S. are providing a safer workplace than union contractors, comparable benefits, comparable hours, and a comparable quality of life to debunk that. So when you think about principles, I think that when you look at most of the merit-based contractors that are in association, or maybe not even in this association, those principles align with the principles of ABC. And again, going back to what we said, just want to do the right thing.
I think they're going to run out of, arguments at a certain point, because as long as I've been at ABC, to your point, the unions have said just those exact things, right? We have unsafe workplaces. We don't train. We're going to race to the bottom. PLAs make safer job sites. Well, and we don't provide insurance. You could go on and on and on. And to your point, we've debunked all of those things, and we have the data to prove it. We just need our members to share the data with us, truly, right? And sign up for STEP and AQC, to be able to bring that information to the Hill debunks everything the union says, right? And so at a certain point, what are they going to say, right? Like, we have the facts behind us, and principled. So we should be able to win on that.
Well, I've done both. And
thank you.
We constantly spread that message. in our chapter to get folks involved in STEP. I mean, easy program, free program to go in and self-assess, where you're at with your safety program. It's not only beneficial for you all, but it's beneficial for the contractor to be able to assess their program and their culture. So I'm glad you brought that up. It's a wonderful tool that every one of our members should be taking advantage of. So while we're on this non-controversial topic of political policy and such a fun subject that everybody loves to talk about, let's just go right into immigration reform and what's happening on the Hill with the merit-based visa program. I know that's been thrown out there. There's obviously an issue going on in this country right now, and we certainly understand a great deal of what's happening. And I hear people say, when you talk about immigration reform, and people will say, well, you support illegal immigration. It's not true at all. But what I do support is immigration reform, because there is a lot of hardworking immigrants in this country that, like we do in our business, want to do the right thing, and they want to take care of their family. They want to get up and go to work. They don't have a criminal record, and they're just here to be just hardworking tax-paying citizens that want to be a part of our community. And that's what I believe we're advocating for. But I'd like to hear, one of you just give us an update on where we're at when it comes to merit-based visa and what you all are hearing from the Hill.
Sure. So I'll back up a little bit just for those that don't know. We have been advocating for a merit-based, market-based worker visa program. And we were just told yesterday that we officially have a co-sponsor for that bill in the House. He is introducing the bill in April, and then I'll be able to share who the co-sponsor is. But we are working behind the scenes to gather additional co-sponsors and industry stakeholders for our Market-Based Worker Visa Act. It will address the workforce industry shortage by creating an industry-specific H-2 construction temporary visa program. So unlike H-2Bs and H-2-1s, it will be construction specific to address the shortage in our industry. And if what people see, if people like what they see and this works, then any other industry is by all means welcome to take it and do this themselves, right? This isn't us, cutting people out of the deal. It's just us sort of solving our shortage right now, because there's 60,000 H-2B worker visas out there right now, and that is not enough to fill all the shortage in the entire business community, right? Construction alone has a 349,000 workforce shortage in 2026. Is that down a bit from 2025? Yes, but it's still huge. And so when you lose all of those workers that are here on temporary protected status, those people that have been working in the industry for over 30 years and are hardworking and contributing to society, and those folks are all no longer in the country, that exacerbates the number of the worker shortage. So we want to find a way to get people here who are interested in construction, who are hard workers, who want to contribute to society. We also support a bill that would help keep the people that are already here working, who are not criminals, to help them be able to stay on a visa and contribute as well. But we'll have that bill introduced in April. Our original plan was to hopefully see that piece of legislation added on to a larger, maybe border funding bill. But as I'm sure everyone listening to this is aware, the government is having some issues keeping itself funded. So right now the government is funded, but DHS is only funded for the next 9 days. So there's a bit of back and forth going on with some ICE controversy in DHS. And so where that ends up is a bigger sort of animal than our piece of legislation. But it will be introduced, and hopefully we can find a larger bill to get it put in and get across the finish line.
Excellent news. I mean, it's a great step in the right direction. You hit on a key topic, 340-something thousand workers, I believe you said, shortage.
Mm-hmm.
I hear rumors and rumblings that we could be back in the 500,000 range next year. Maybe not. Maybe it hangs around that 340,000 worker shortage. But what we know is we can't fix a shortage of 300, 400, 500,000 workers with apprenticeship programs and workforce development programs overnight, right? We're headed in the right direction with what we're doing when it comes to education and how we support that. And seeing some of our school systems get it back into the schools and trying to target those middle school age children and get them interested in this industry again. But it's going to take time. And there's really no way to fix the problem without our immigrant workforce. And we're not the only industry, I think, that's saying that. I mean, the hospitality service industry, the ag industry is all affected by this. And again, there is a lot of good actors out there that are part of the immigrant workforce that want to do the right thing, and they're just looking for a way and an opportunity to be a part of our society. And
This has obviously been an issue. The immigration reform has been an issue for over 20 years. And to your point, nothing can be solved overnight. But if there had been a common sense visa system put in place 20 years ago, maybe this problem, the workforce shortage, might not be as exacerbated as it is. And if there was a way to come here legally and work, and we have in our legislation, there's a lot of restrictions on how you can get here, right? There's a lot of vetting before you can come, and there's a lot of pre-screenings and drug tests. So, we're trying to put in place as many things as possible to get this across the finish line, and get those people here and fill the job openings that we need to, build America.
well, again, thank you for your work and what you do, and especially on this. And having a bill sponsor is, I think, just that in itself is a huge win, or at least a signal that we might be headed in the right direction.
Well, what's
with
good is that
seeing some
April
relief.
called
So,
right before our legislative conference. So we could essentially just spend the 2 days on the Hill getting co-sponsors for this bill and pushing it. It comes at the perfect time.
you read my mind on that. It's exactly what I was thinking. So, yeah,
Had to plug it.
we should just all show up and just do nothing but advocate for it.
Yeah,
All right. So we've talked about PLAs, merit-based visa. That was kind of my topics of what I wanted to talk about to get an update from you guys. Is there any other policy update that you all want to share before we move on? Anything I've missed, not thinking about?
I spent a lot of time last year and the year before talking about the Faster Labor Contracts Act, which was introduced by Senator Hawley in the Senate, a Republican, mind you, and also had some Republican sponsors in the House as well. We do not see that going anywhere in the near future. That being said, we are holding people accountable that have co-sponsored the bill, and will continue to do so. We will also continue to make sure that that bill doesn't see the light of day or parts of it. We saw a couple weeks ago there was a labor vote supposed to come up in the House, and it ended up dying because a couple of Republicans didn't want to take any labor votes. And we'll see a lot more of that as we enter an election year. Less and less votes on meaningful legislation, and mostly just messaging bills. I think the Republicans are going to spend a lot of their time messaging on the one big beautiful bill. That's where we've seen the messaging coming into the election, and the benefits of that. And we have a member coming in this week actually to speak to the highlights of that bill and how helpful it is for the construction industry. And any information that ABC members listening to this would like to share would be great. The Republican conference would like to share it with the members in specific districts to help them campaign. So you're going to see a lot of campaigning and not a lot of legislating is the long and short of it.
Campaigning is a good segue into my next question. What should we expect to see leading into the 26 election cycle?
Chaos. No, I would say we're in it, right? We are in the 2026 election cycle. The first primaries will start hitting, right? End of February, beginning of March. We're already in February. What we will see moving forward, and this is just sort of the state of the electoral politics in 2026, right? So Republicans do have a 4-seat majority in the U.S. Senate. As of right now, they are favorable to hold that majority in the U.S. Senate. Democrats do have a bit of an uphill climb to flip seats, right? Dems are a little bit more vulnerable on the Senate side of things. Nothing is off the table, though. I will say that. I always think that's a very important caveat, that we are 272 days away from the election as of today when we're recording this podcast. So that's a lot of time, right? It might not feel like a lot of time, but it is. But when it comes to the Senate, there's a few open seats, which will be interesting. I think there's a few states where some incumbents are being primaried, which is very interesting as well. So we'll see what happens with those. The real talk of the town, though, is the U.S. House of Representatives, right? On such a slim margin. There's such a slim majority there. And then when we've already seen a number of states redistricting mid-cycle, that adds complication. So, I've said it once, I've said it a lot of times. In years past, you would see midterm elections where the U.S. House of Representatives might swing 40, 50, right? 62 seats, whatever the case may be. Those days are gone, right? We're looking at, if a party has a 10, 15 seat majority, that's considered pretty large, just the way the swing districts have kind of shrunk. And so what we're really going to see impacting the U.S. House of Representatives are those suburban seats, right? Those areas where they were really tight margins last year, but not just last year, right? Really tight margins in 22, tight margins in 2020. Those same seats, for better or worse, those candidates still have their work cut out for them. U.S. House is going to be decided maybe by 10 seats. And in places like, for example, California, they don't even know who's running in all those seats yet, right? And it's the election year. So I joke that say what to expect chaos, maybe not that crazy, but there's just a lot of factors. So while the majority is very slim and, if the election was held today, the generic ballot has Democrats at +5. So if the election was held today, would the Democrats flip the U.S. House of Representatives? Very, very possible, quite frankly. But the election's not being held today. And I think what it's going to come down to is, one, candidate quality. Who are the candidates? Who comes out on top? And then two, what does turnout look like? Because midterm election turnout is different. We don't have a presidential race happening. And so some folks won't vote. Right. And so it'll just be interesting to see, honestly. I think it's a little too early to tell. So my advice to everyone is if you're talking to somebody and they're telling you exactly what's going to happen in November of 2026, if you could please introduce me to them so I can also learn exactly what's going to happen, we would appreciate it.
I think people are wondering right now what's going to happen in the next 9 days. Are we just going to keep coming to new deals on DHS funding over and over and over again? Because that's going to make for a interesting 2026.
Are we going to buy Greenland in September? How will voters feel about that? We just don't know.
It's a wild ride, right? And there's a lot going on. So there's a lot of distractions that's happening that are taking away from campaigning to some degree. We've seen a supermajority from the Republican Party. Do you think that's helped them for this upcoming election cycle, or do you think it's hurt them?
It's a good question.
I think what you do with a supermajority is how you win an election or lose an election. And we tend to, as a party, squander away our supermajorities.
And
it seemed that way to some degree, yes.
Too, with the question of, has the Republicans with the supermajority helped themselves? What does that look like for 2026? It's funny because politics is very much a pendulum, right? So when you look at, whenever there's a supermajority, what happened? And I don't know if I would call anywhere from a 4 to 1 seat majority in the U.S. House of Representatives a supermajority, but we'll call it they still have the majority. But we normally see the pendulum swing back. That's just history, right? The majority of history, midterm elections, whoever the party is in the presidency, if that party also holds the U.S. House of Representatives, more oftentimes than not, it swings back. And it's not to say that the party in power at that time has done anything good or bad. It's just, folks vote folks into office and then they're like, I don't know if I like this. Vote another way. And then they say, I don't know if I like this, right? Perfect example is look at the state of Virginia. Virginia just voted out last year a Republican governor, right? It's a one-term seat for a Republican governor previously, voted in a Democratic governor. Well, that Democratic governor and the Democratic majority at the Virginia state level has just introduced 50 new taxes. One of those taxes is the taxes on dog walkers is a good example. So folks who voted those individuals in might not be that happy. So will that impact how they vote, especially if they're dog walkers? 2026? Yes. So I think it's very important to Kristen's point of if somebody is in power, if there is a majority, what do they do with that majority? What are they passing? How are they messaging the bills that they are passing? How does the public feel? And then, what is the appetite of the country for the president of the United States? And I just say that in the sense of, presidents always have the lowest approval rating when they're in office. And a lot of times that approval rating tends to be down during midterm elections. Maybe who knows why? And so that could impact folks as well.
It's pretty wild how the political landscape has changed so much over the years. And especially with campaigning. And I would say, through the past, few couple maybe presidential campaign cycles, we have seen some things change drastically in how campaigning and messaging works and what resonates with people. And I think in some ways it's potentially changed how our elections essentially work or respond as it pertains to campaigning for future generations. And so I do pay close attention to it because I do think it's interesting. And we have a lot more tools, right? There's a lot more information out there. Not all of it's correct, but there's a ton of information. I guess you go to the news, whatever your source is, and you just pick whatever you want to believe is true or accurate in today's times. And that's what influences people, which is, so different from earlier times, or especially when I was growing up when you just didn't have that much media. Certainly didn't have social media, which was maybe nice to some degree to not have that influence in our lives. But it's all part of what we have today and how it influences and persuades decisions. Moving off of that, as we wrap up, is there a couple of campaigns that our members should be paying close attention to across the country in this 26 cycle?
Absolutely. Every campaign that's in your backyard. What I do mean that you should pay attention very
I
closely.
don't disagree with that.
All politics is local. So make sure, first and foremost, look at who's running, where you live. And if you like them and, they align with merit shop, you tell them keep going. And if they don't, ask them if you can have them, bring them out to a job site and educate them on what we do. I would say when it comes to the Senate, I will point out ABC actually has endorsed Mike Rogers for Senate in Michigan, a huge opportunity there, right? A huge toss-up seat. Mike Rogers is a former U.S. House member, has quite the resume. He's wonderful, a wonderful champion of ABC, definitely one for folks to pay attention to. We then have, and then we obviously have big states and, big races in Maine and North Carolina, and we could go on and on and on. But I would also say Georgia, another one, U.S. Senate, right? Packed primary in the Georgia front. And then the U.S. House of Representatives, right? There's some really key races where there are merit shop champions there. One of them being, Pennsylvania 7 with Ryan McKenzie. Another one being, Arizona 6 with Juan Ciscomani. And we could actually rattle off, a bunch of races across the board. The real important thing, especially for ABC members, is on our ABC Action app, you can go into each state and you can look up all incumbents in each state and you can see what their score is on ABC issues, right? So when we're looking at what are the top races, I would say folks who stand with ABC and have that top tier voting record with us are top of mind for us, right? Like I said, Juan Ciscomani in Iowa. There's a ton of races in Iowa, right? Representative Miller Meeks and Representative Nunn. And then we have folks just across the board, quite frankly.
I think this also speaks to, you both said that politics is in your backyard, and obviously that's very, very true. But a lot of times in states, that are very red, we get the question, well, why should we contribute to PAC or why should we contribute to FEA when, we don't have the union threats and, the issues that people in the Northeast have, and we don't need to contribute to your PAC and we're fine. The reason that PAC is so important and FEA is because those dollars go to elect merit shop candidates. And when we win those races at the end of the day, it depends on if John Thune is the leader of the Senate or if it's Chuck Schumer. And in the House, it depends on if it's Hakeem Jeffries or Mike Johnson. So I think when you're thinking locally, yes, that's very important. But who do you want to control both the House and the Senate, right? Even if it's just by a 1 vote margin. So I would say every race is really important, especially in the House.
Well said. ABC Action app. I'll give a quick plug. If you're an ABC member, you're listening to this. If you don't have the app, you need to get the app. Tons of useful information, a lot of action that you can take in that app. If you're a member and you haven't taken a look at the ABC PAC, certainly need to do so. It's what keeps this, machine running, what keeps advocacy going for our industry and keeps us in business. So Kristen, Mel, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I know it's cold outside. Y'all are probably dreading leaving the office, but I appreciate y'all hanging around for a late afternoon, giving us some insights on what you guys are doing behind the scenes each and every day for us. we appreciate you for that. We appreciate this association for what you do, and just can't say enough about the work that you guys do and how you present it and how you keep us informed. So thank you again.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your leadership and volunteering and for this podcast.
Thank you so much.
Take care.